Hi, my name's Eric Dupuy,
And I'm Matt Orfanello.
and this is Sanctioned Vintage Magic. So we're starting out here very excited. We have a tournament from Scholars on February 10th. In round one, I'm actually on camera here facing Duncan with his Dark Depths deck. Now it's a pretty unusual brew. He's got basically a mono black shell splashing some blue for power and mental missteps. And I'm running a pretty standard rug list.
Now, one thing I like about Dark Depths is that it's really starting to emerge in a lot of formats because of Thespian Stage. Is he running Thespian Stage in this list?
Yeah, he snuck some copies in. His real game plan is to use the Hex Mage, which has a lot of utility in this format. Hex Mage can
Hmm.
also take out Jace, which is very big. And the first strike keeps a lot of creatures back. I mean, I've got Young Pyromancer, the tokens off of the Pyromancer, and of course, Unflipped Delvers die to almost anything. But that first strike makes it very dangerous to swing into it. You really have to make sure that you're getting that out of the way. You just can't throw away card advantage like that every round.
Right, and in your list, you're very similar to almost like a legacy list where you're playing Delver, lots of instants and sorceries. You have your Young Pyromancer and your Tarmogoyf. Do you play any other creatures besides those?
No, just the Delver, Goyf, and Pyromancer. It's all you need. Now, when you're running Delver, you really have to have a lot of instants and sorceries. I mean, you're going to have to go over 20, and that really limits the number of threats you have. So the way that the deck ends up being built is you have to have one threat stick and then be able to defend it. And that's why you see a ton of Flusterstorms, Spell Pierces, Mental Missteps, Force of Wills, and then the Gushes to draw into them.
Hmm. And now your threats are all very, very mana light. They're like 2 mana, 1 mana threats. So it seems like you don't get a lot of disadvantage out of playing a Gush.
Oh, absolutely. Gush is really made for a deck like this. Right now, without the ability to use Merchant Scroll to chain them together, it's just a card advantage spell, and this is one of the few decks that can really use it well. Like you said, you're setting yourself back 2 mana, but in a deck like this, what happens a lot of the time is you'll have 2 lands in play, you'll be able to gush floating mana, play a land, so you'll have Spell Pierce mana up, and then run your creature out there. You Spell Pierce to protect it if you need to, and if not, you still have Counter Magic open on your opponent's turn.
Now, in a format with lots of cards like Ancestral Recall and Force of Will and things that target floating around, are you able to support misdirection in your list?
I don't really think it's worth it because there's nothing that I really have to make stick. So in an instance like that, I'd rather have like a Flusterstorm and make sure that their ancestral doesn't resolve than go down a card and potentially lose the counter war and then be that much farther behind. Now, if I was playing a deck like Oath of Druids, absolutely I would consider running Misdirection because the value of the card that you're resolving, like a Show and Tell Din Gristlebrand, is more than enough to make up for the fact that you just went down 2 cards. But yeah, in this list, there's really not enough that it's really exciting to Force of Will. A lot of the time, I'll just build up and never hold on to those Force of Wills until the very last possible time. Sometimes even hard casting them because losing the card advantage, even if you are kind of picking up a card here and there with Gush, it can be really hurtful.
Now, does uh, does Duncan get to use any power in his list? He's a mono black, correct?
Well, he did splash blue for missteps and for a little bit of power. Yeah, that's a decision he made. Now he could have gone unpowered if he wanted. For those who are not familiar with our tournament structure here, we actually do an unpowered prize, which is just amazing value. Now there you go. You see that Mox Jet there,
Hmm.
proving that it was the right choice for him to be running power. I mean, this is just going to make his deck so much better. The ability to make a first turn play. So he's grabbing that Underground Sea. He knows I'm not running Wastelands. That is one of the things that's very different about these Delver decks is you don't get to run Wasteland compared to the Legacy build. Sometimes those even have Stifle and they're a real mana denial strategy. No mana denial on my side of the board.
Well, you can't really pick up a wasteland off a Gush.
Yeah, that's the major problem, absolutely. So he went ahead and ran out that first turn Hex Mage. Doesn't have a Dark Depths in play yet. That is slightly questionable.
Hmm.
I think he was maybe playing around a hard counter.
And it meets a lightning bolt.
Yeah, that's devastating.
That's a hard counter
Yeah, the
in
only
this
way I can
situation.
really stop a Hex Mage is with Force of Will.
Oh yeah, Flusterstorm doesn't work on it. Mental Misstep doesn't work on it.
Yeah, so
Spell Pierce.
if he had waited until he had a Dark Depths, then that lightning bolt would have been completely blank. So that's unfortunate for him.
Right, he could have sacrificed it in response to you bolting. And you could it's not like he can sacrifice and you bolt in response because the sacrifice is part of the cost of the ability. And now you force the second one, pitching a Delver. Is that what
Yeah,
that is?
no, Delver's out of there. Definitely a good trade.
And is that a Dark Depths?
That is the Dark Depths, yeah.
Yeah.
So that is just unfortunate.
Now I don't mind playing the Dark Depths after you play the Hex Mage if you're doing it on the same turn because playing a land does not pass priority, so you don't have a chance to respond because no matter what, nothing's going to happen unless the Hex Mage resolves.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So
Even if I had a Pyrokinesis or something that costs no mana, I wouldn't be able to break up that play.
Mm-hmm. So now you have your own Delver, and getting some green mana going on.
Yeah, main
Maybe
deck,
just
you're
blue.
really just looking at the Goyfs. And then we're going to go ahead and Spell Pierce a Vamp Tutor.
Oh yeah, the Vamp. Yep. Seems important in a 2-card combo deck.
Yeah, and Spell Pierce can't really counter anything that I'd be happy about countering. So Vamp is going to have to do. Against a more traditional deck, a lot of the time you'd let them resolve the Vamp so then you could counter what they tutored for. But Spell Pierce has so few targets that I'm just going to run it out there whenever possible.
Right. You got to get the value while you can. It's not going to counter any of his creatures. It's not going to counter. You can't counter a land. So
Yeah, if he grabbed either Thespian Stage or another Vampire Hexmage, I'd be in a world of hurt.
is that a Dark Ritual or a Spinning Darkness?
Dark Ritual. He's
Okay.
going to go ahead and push something out here. Necro would be devastating.
Liliana would be pretty cool.
Liliana would also be very, very good in this situation. And we've got a Crucible of Worlds.
Crucible, so he can replay his Dark Depths should anything happen. And that'll also help with his Thespian stages later in the game too.
Yeah, it gives him a just a real inevitability. I'm not sure if he realizes it though. Against my deck, a 2020 Indestructible pretty much just beats it. I don't even have Jace to bounce the token. Now that token isn't as strong in Vintage as some people might think. There are a bunch of ways of handling it, but my deck has none of them. It really is like chump block with a Delver and hope to get around it. Time Walk would be one of those cards that could really allow me to swarm around if I have a young Pyromancer in play. But for the most part, if he makes a 2020, he's going to win the game.
So right now, his most live draws. Obviously, Hexmage is the most live draw. Second, I think, actually, Thespian Stage is probably the most live. Hexmage being the second, and then maybe a Dark Confidant would be pretty strong here.
Yeah, I agree with that assessment. I mean, really, he needs to get something to go along with that Dark Depths, and at least the Dark Confidant will dig toward it. Now, something like a Necro or an Ancestral Recall would be fantastic, but this Crucible really doesn't give him much of a chance. The card advantage generated off it isn't going to be that huge.
Is he transmuting something? What is he doing?
Let's see what he's got there. Is that a Liliana? I believe it is.
Now, another card he could play in this deck is Teleria West. He could transmute for, if you have the Thespian Stage, you transmute for the Dark Depths, or vice versa.
Yeah, that could definitely be a way to go. It's just a question of how much blue do you really want to cram in there.
Right. Double blue could be a little restricting in a mono black-esque deck.
Yeah, right now he really is just trying to splash, versus the decks without Wasteland. That's fine, but once you start running stuff like Basic Island, it gets a lot trickier.
Yeah. I would like to see him get a Wasteland going on with some Recursion or a Strip Mine.
Yeah, recurring that fetch land is not going to be overwhelming. It does play pretty well with Liliana in terms of discarding lands, because he's going to make his land drop every single turn. Hopefully he'll be able to cast anything else, so Liliana could be in a really good position here. So he's going to go ahead. Let's see what he does with that.
I mean, I hope he makes you sacrifice your little bug for his sake.
He did not. All right, so he made us discard there.
Okay.
And I do not flip.
You discarded a Steel Sabotage, which I'm sure you're more than happy to do in this situation.
Yeah, it could have been nice to bounce something in response to Liliana's +1 to make him discard it. That's like a real value play.
Mm.
But I'm not really that worried about the Crucible. I'm sure whatever else I have in my hand is going to be much better than that play. So we've got a Gush,
Floating Tarmogoyf mana, I'm sure.
Tarmogoyf, and possibly a Young Pyromancer mana. I mean, either way, whatever I have in my hand, you can be sure I'll be able to cast it after this Gush. And
Looks like
another
another
Delver.
Delver, yeah.
So now this is a difficult situation. Liliana
Attacking her down to 3 again. So
can edict one of them, and then the other guy will mop up. So Liliana's really kind of backed into a corner here.
yeah, he really should have made you sacrifice last turn, because then he could have +1 this turn, and if your Delver doesn't flip, Liliana would survive, and he would still get to grind cards out of your hand.
Yeah, Liliana's not the best answer to Delvers because they are so efficient, but given enough time, it would eventually get there.
More lands. Now, if I were him, I would play a fetch. I would replay a fetch land, and start pulling some lands out of his deck to make his draws more live. Generally, I don't think deck thinning is usually a factor, but when you have multiple activations off of the same fetch land, and you can do that every turn, that's when you really start to see a difference in your draws.
Yeah, and if these Delvers don't flip, I mean, it could be an abysmal clock. But here we see Mystical Tutor. That's actually going to ensure that they both flip. So this is going to be a really bad turn for Duncan, or a really good turn for me. I mean, we're going to be flipping both Delvers and then resolving an Ancestral in all likelihood.
He needed to sinkhole that fetch land there.
Yeah, that would have been nice. Maybe I'd make the misplay and crack it. All right, so we've got 6 damage on board. Going to be able to get rid of Liliana, start chipping away at Duncan's life total. So this is getting pretty bad. And knowing that he has no cards in hand because of the Liliana activations, just makes that Ancestral play that much safer.
Right. You're not no fear of just running it out there.
Yeah, mental misstep can be a real problem when you're looking at like Mystical Tutor into Ancestral, and they counter it for a single card, possibly no mana, or at the very least, just mana they weren't going to use anyways. I mean, it's really a huge setback tempo-wise, but here there's no risk. If I was really worried about mental misstep, then Time Walk would have been a totally reasonable card to get, because then I could potentially just push through 12 damage just with those Delvers.
Oh, interesting. So Preordain puts both cards on the bottom, and I like that you used it after you fetched, because now those bad cards you put on the bottom, are more likely to stay on the bottom for the rest of the game.
We've got Liliana out of there. I'll tell you,
Down.
Tarmogoyf is usually a 4/5, but once you start getting Planeswalkers into the graveyard, that guy gets big very fast.
Oh yeah, and I mean, Vintage is a format where people are gonna cast cards like Tinker and play artifacts and get artifacts in the graveyard too. Versus an Oath deck, you counter one Oath and all of a sudden enchantments in there. Basically, the only card you don't see in Vintage is Tribal.
Yeah, Goyf can get really, really big. He is a legitimate threat. It's not the type of card that I usually want to shuffle up. I've been on this deck for a while. I'm really trying to understand it. It's a deck that it's not running the broken cards that I'm used to, and I'm just spending some time really trying to understand the directions that it attacks, the games that I'm able to win that don't look winnable, and also how to make sure that I don't lose games that it seems like I'm ahead, to really understand how to cut out all my opponent's outs, because there are times where you could commit with another creature and then it gives your opponent a slight chance to win, and it's just like, what was I doing playing those creatures? Like, I would have won eventually anyways if I just had that, say, Spell Pierce and Flusterstorm open instead of just a single Flusterstorm. Then they wouldn't have been able to win. So you really do usually just want to ride out a single creature. In this instance, I think it's really about just finishing the game as quickly as possible against Duncan, because I'm not going to be able to counter the thing that actually beats me. Most decks, Spell Pierce would like stop a Jace or whatever kind of removal they might have. But here, I mean, it's Thespian Stage or Vampire Hexmage, and that's it.
Now, did we adjust his life total here? Because I thought he was at 11 after that Liliana swing. They killed Liliana. He might be at 5. But if he's at 11, then
I think either way, that's going to do it. Yeah, with that Goif.
is he at 5-6 right now?
Yeah, I believe
Yeah.
so. So that's going to seal the deal there.
All right.
Goif, Goif got pretty big. I think the takeaway there is if Duncan had not just run out that Hex Mage, if he had made sure the Dark Depths was on board, then that Lightning Bolt would have been a blank, and that game would have been completely different because I only had the single Force of Will. So, I mean, that's literally the difference in between winning and losing right there. So it's a tough one to learn, but I mean, sometimes even though you can use that 2 mana on the first turn, it's not necessarily the right play versus decks that have spot removal.
Do you think he plays Urborg Tomb of Yawgmoth in his list?
It's gone in and out. I believe he's still running it. It's one of those cards that can actually help your opponent in Vintage because black is a pretty common color.
Yeah.
Compared to Legacy, the drawback can be much, much worse.
Well, it allows for that powerless turn 2 win, because you're able to go turn 1, Dark Depths or Urborg, turn 2 the other one, and cast Hex Mage without power, and have the combo on turn 2.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's very clear. The upside is very powerful. And the downside isn't like a total blowout, but there are definitely times where you're giving your opponent even more access to the colors will allow them to race you. I mean, you're turning on cards like Demonic Tutor and Yawgmoth's Will. That can be a little dangerous. But yeah, I do like the card. Another potential criticism of the card is that it only makes black mana, and that can be a problem too if you're, going really deep into the blue. I mean, right now he's just got Ancestral and Time Walk and the Mental Missteps, but if you're going to go really deep into blue, then the single color on it could actually be a liability as well. But yeah, I like the card. It's one of those cards that I'm glad sees eternal play. Kind of like Thespian Stage and Dark Depths. I mean, those are the type of cards that are just fun to see in a mana base filled with like dual lands and fetch lands to see that these cards are good enough, even though they're, not 20 years old.
Right. It seems like with Magic, they just sort of like they started off and they were like, okay, cards can't be more powerful than this. That's what they decided the first time around.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, you don't expect to see anything better than an Underground Sea, but then they throw something like, you compare Taiga to Grove of the Burn Willows. I mean, that's a very interesting comparison. Grove is actually better than Taiga in some decks. You can't fetch it. I mean, you end up running both of them because sometimes you need to fetch the red green land.
Right.
You can't just randomly draw it. But it is interesting to see that competition. I'm curious, down the line, what else we're going to see in terms of competition with the original duels.
Yeah, well, Grove, I mean, it actually just turns on certain strategies. It allows Punishing Fires to be a card. And in Modern, it's basically just the same thing as a Taiga in a deck like Tron, where you're going to play cards that go way over the top of your opponent. You're not worried about them gaining 2 or 3 life over the course of a game because you're going to drop a Karn and a Worm Coil Engine on turn 3 or 4, and just they won't have any way of beating that. And that's one of the downsides of the dual lands in Modern, is a lot of times strategies like Burn and Zoo are becoming more relevant because people are dealing 3 to 5 damage to themselves in the early parts of the game.
Yeah, I agree. And honestly, that's one of the things that I like so much about Vintage and Legacy is that your mana base isn't fighting against you the whole time. Like I
Right.
see modern games and sometimes it's just painful. Like you're looking at like first turn lava axe so you can, you Thoughtseize. It's like fetch land into a watery grave, into a Thoughtseize, taking 5. And
Ouch.
that's just brutal.
Yeah. Hope it was worth it.
So let's see here. Duncan figuring out his hand. Looks like he's going to keep. Looks like I'm contemplating what direction to go in. Now, this is really an abysmal matchup for me. It's really difficult. As we saw in that first game, if Duncan had played flawlessly, then I would have gotten crushed on like turn 3 by a 2020. Force of Will is one of the only cards in my deck that really interacts, and that still doesn't stop the Thespian Stage kill. So yeah, it's tough. I have a really hard time racing it. Even if it just like naturally progresses, it's still a hard clock to beat. I mean, this deck doesn't generally kill you on the third or fourth turn. It can be pretty slow.
I'm surprised we didn't see anything along the lines of discard out of Duncan's hand last game. I'm not sure if it's because he's just not running it or if he didn't draw it, but I would definitely be running some combination of him to Torak, Thoughtseize, Duress in his list.
Yeah, Thoughtseize, I believe, is still in there, and he's bounced cards around quite a bit. Him to Torok's one of those cards that I don't like to play against it, but I don't really ever want to be shuffling it up. Like the random nature of it is just one of those things where sometimes you just wish that you had Thoughtseize them, and then other times it's just like the best card possible. So I tend to err on the side of the Thoughtseize or a Duress if I'm going to be playing discard.
Well, I agree to that, but I think in a mostly mono black deck, I would definitely play it just because it's one of the only ways you have of generating card advantage. Liliana generates card. Was that a Liliana? What was that? No Rod?
No, let's see here.
Can't see because of the glare.
That was a
Dark
Confidant.
Confidant.
Yeah, Confidant.
Okay.
So good start.
Yeah, you definitely want to be playing that guy on turn one if you can.
Yeah, and worth it to Dark Ritual there because you're going to be regaining the card advantage, waiting a turn, really suboptimal.
It looks like he kept a one lander with turn one Bob.
Yeah, that's going to be punished.
Yeah. I mean, the upside is like if he resolves and that works, you're probably going to win that game because you're going to draw 2 for 1 until you win. The downside being all you need is one counter spell or one removal spell and it's game over.
Yeah, there are 8 cards in my deck that just completely destroy that. Now, if he had a mental misstep in his hand, it would have been a completely different story. But just the fact that that lightning bolt went uncontested and just completely blew out the strategy, I mean, he's in a very, very bad spot.
Goyf already at 3 power with Bob, Bolt, and a land. Dark Ritual also.
Trying to handle our life totals here. Had to go old school with this event. We're figuring out.
Boom, windmill slam that.
That is desperately needed.
All right, now you have 2 mana. What can you do? He's got so many options. He doesn't know what to play first.
Asking me how many cards I have in my hand. Yeah, if that doesn't give him a few solid lines, it's going to be tough. Looks like another Confidant.
Okay. I can get on board with that. He's still at 17 life. Pretty high, pretty respectable life total. Can easily draw 3 to 4 cards off that without having to worry too much.
Yeah, so I have a decision to make there. Well, we've got a Brainstorm. So
Probably the most powerful card in Legacy. Maybe the most, maybe like the 11th most powerful card in Vintage.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult to narrow it down exactly how powerful it is, but it's so good. I miss it. I mean, that's one of the big reasons why I play so much Legacy, is because I enjoy Brainstorm so much. The interesting thing oh, look at this. We've got a Brainstorm followed by a Gush.
You just like those cards you put back so much.
They were just worth it.
And Pithing Needle.
All right.
That's going to name Vampire
Hexmage.
Hexmage. He didn't show you the Thespian stage game 1, so you have no reason to name that. And naming Dark Depths wouldn't do anything because it's a trigger. Well, it would keep him from paying 3 mana to remove ice counters.
Yes. That can happen, though, in a long game, but it's just not likely to happen against Rug.
Mm-hmm. So he revealed that Swamp. Now he's got 3 mana. I would like to see a Liliana here. I mean, I think that would probably be the most powerful thing he could do at this point. He's already made his land drop, so it's not like he can combo this turn. Liliana would be a very strong play.
Yeah, Liliana is really good versus Rug. And that's another issue that I have with the deck is you have to care about a lot of cards that I generally wouldn't care about. And that's why I'm running it. I want to get in those matches versus decks that run things like Stoneforge Mystic. Because the decks that I usually run, someone would tap out for a Stoneforge Mystic and it'd just be like, thanks, I kill you now. You
Yeah,
know, and it's just like, I can't believe you tapped off that mana for something that's like so far away from paying off.
right.
But versus this type of deck, I mean, unless I can bolt the Stoneforge, it could be pretty difficult. Now, Ancient Grudge does help. Ancient Grudge is the type of card that can really make getting equipment on board and using it almost impossible, even if it's just a tempo play.
Well, what are they gonna do? Counter it like twice?
Yeah,
Just
they can't counter it twice. They might be able to respond to the first one by bouncing it and then put it out again later and then bounce it again. I mean, but just you're gonna out tempo them by then.
hmm So you're forcing Duncan to chump block here. Well, he's not forced to chump block, but he's choosing to chump block at 14. He's got a resolve confidence, so he wants to maintain a high life total. Goyf is now 4 because of time walk. Um, so he's really hoping that the 2 cards he's going to peel off the top will get him the rest of the way. Excuse me.
Gush doing a lot of work here, picking up the extra cards, and anytime you're doing a one for one trade off, Gush is just super strong. You know, when you're able to gush into counters or something like Pithing Needle to shut down the strategy. Oh
Oh
no!
wow,
Wow,
that's gonna
that's
that's gonna do some damage here.
that's a problem.
Yeah. So he might as well just put his Bob in front of there because you're not going to allow him to draw any cards. Um, I mean, there's just no other option. Or there's the option of taking it and hoping you don't kill Bob, I guess.
Yeah, I agree that it would have been much better to block there. I mean, there's no way. Now that Jite isn't a foreign language, so Duncan may have been unfamiliar with it. Um, that maybe that was what was going on there.
Yeah. Well, he's at 10 life. He really needs a Liliana here. Um, a creature isn't going to do it. Oh, a time walk. That's almost like a Bob.
And a
Demonic Tutor.
DT. Okay. So lots of crazy things could happen here.
Yeah. He made a land drop this turn, so nothing too crazy can happen. Um,
It would have been nice if he had absorbed that damage with the Dark Confidant. Um, oh, wow. He almost didn't DT there.
I mean, you
That
can
would have been
fail
an
to
issue.
find because it's. Oh no, you can't fail
No,
to
you
find
can't
with
even.
DT
Yeah,
because you can, as long as you have cards in your deck, you can find a card in your deck.
absolutely. Yeah, if it was a mystical tutor, then you can say that you didn't find any instants or sorceries, but DT, got to pick something, even if it's at random.
Yeah, it's funny. You probably don't run into that interaction too often. Fail to find off DT, like I don't know. I can't think of a situation where that would be really good, unless the other card in your hand is like Infernal Tutor, but then you just use the DT. I don't know. I can't think of. I can't.
Yeah, there were times back in the day with Mindslaver when Control Slaver was in the format. It would be nice to potentially Demonic Tutor and find nothing.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
but yeah, I mean, usually you could find Ancestral and Ancestral them or something along those lines.
So he's really thinking about this. He understands that this decision is probably going to be the most important decision he gets to make for the rest of the game. Um,
He's looking at Ancestral.
Ancestral would be very strong. I think it gives him the most outs. Liliana would also be fine. Taking away your threat and just starting to grind. Like, if you're not able to have more than one creature at a time, Liliana can really take control of the board and sort of bring parity to the hands situation.
Yeah, I think Liliana might be the strongest play here. I don't know that Ancestral is going to resolve because I have Misstep. I'm tapped out, so the only card that's going to be able to interact with him is Force of Will. So we'll see what he gets here. You know, he doesn't have Snapcaster Mage, so it's not like he's going to get added value out of getting that Ancestral into the graveyard, unless, and yeah, I guess Yawgmoth's will. That's that is totally irrelevant.
Oh yeah, Yogwill would be very strong here.
Well, he
Uh,
doesn't have anything that he can really do off of it.
he has a Dark Ritual, so he can make a lot of mana, Demonic Tutor, Time Walk. He could like DT for a Thespian stage, Time Walk, and maybe rip Dark Depths.
Yeah, that's possible. Let's see what
Still,
we got.
still in his original turn. He hasn't gone to his Time Walk turn yet. Making sure he has no other plays. Being careful. Nothing wrong with that.
All right, here we go.
I think I see a Dark Depths in his hand. I think maybe that's what he DT'd for. But it's not going to be. So Tarmogoyf at 4 power, and GT can give it +2/+2, so that's 6. No, that's not. You're still looking at a 2-turn clock unless you have double bolt in hand. Um,
I think we're.
he's he's doing things. That's a Hex
Oh
Mage. It's
no,
not going to be enough.
that's not the way to do it.
Nope.
Nope, I still have the counter on the GT.
Yeah.
Oh, he's got Echoing
Echoing
Truth for the
Truth.
needle. Oh, he sequenced that wrong.
If he had just Echoing Truth first, and then played the Hex Mage, oh, Duncan.
That's a blowout.
Wow. Yeah, he sequenced that wrong because you yeah, he gave you the opportunity to respond. So now I don't think even if okay, so next turn if you don't replay the needle.
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna have to stretch. We're gonna have to really stretch to find a way of me losing there. Yeah, that is.
He can still drop Thespian stage. He can still do this.
Yeah,
You can't even counter that. You don't have Stifle. It's a land. It's not a spell. It's a special action in the game, so you can't even respond. You can respond to the activation, but you can't respond to him playing it.
Thespian stage would be very cruel after
He would have to peel it, because
yeah.
and that's
But after that error in sequencing, that would be just like, here's the game. No, never mind. That would be brutal. What have we here?
Liliana, do it. Do it now. What is that?
Looks like a crucible.
Yeah, that's not going to do it.
Yeah, I just spell pierce it.
And he's. I don't think he changed the 10. I think he's at 4 life, right, or 6 life right now. And Chite has 2 counters, so he should be dead on this swing if you activate a Chite. Or just lightning bolt.
Well, there we go.
So Eric taking down round 1. You beat a matchup that shouldn't necessarily be an easy matchup for you to beat.
Yeah, I think Duncan's play errors were really the defining things in that matchup. There were just a couple of little mistakes that ended up having huge consequences in between the not running out the Hex Mage without Dark Depths, and then later on running out the Hex Mage before bouncing the Pithing Needle. Either way, those really would have made a huge difference.
But those are the type of things that you don't really get to learn unless you actually go to a tournament and play. So, I mean, I give him a lot of credit for sleeving up and showing up, and I hope he comes back next time.
Yeah, he has a ton of fun. He's probably enjoys Vintage more than just about anybody. So it's always a pleasure to play against him, and yeah, looking forward to it.
All right, so that was round 1. We'll see you guys back here for round 2.
Hi, this is Eric Dupuis back,
With Matt Orfanello.
and this is Sanctioned Vintage Magic. We're here in round two. We've got Josh Clayton versus BUGr. Josh is on a really interesting humans list. Now, this thing runs Cavern of Souls to power out a bunch of different humans, some of which you wouldn't think would see play alongside the most powerful spells ever printed in Magic. We've got Dark Confidant and Thalia. Those aren't too shocking. But Knight of the Reliquary and Noble Hierarch, those seem more like legacy cards, and they make a big splash here. And of course, Mayor of Averbrook, that guy actually does a lot here. He gives all your humans +1/+1, starts flipping, confuses the hell out of your opponent, because most of them have never even seen the card.
Yeah, this is really interesting. And the Knight of the Reliquary gives him the opportunity to waste and strip his opponents out of the game. It lets him find Cavern of Souls for something that's more important than Knight. Um, and it really lets him just thin his deck out and create a huge monster. Out of the sideboard, he's got Caracas.
Yeah, that answers Gristlebrand, which is a real card. And a lot of the times, if you're able to lock them out with Stony Silence, so they're not going to be able to use Vault Key, that Gristlebrand, he'll still beat you. So you have to get him out of there. I mean, a 7/7 Lifelinker will beat a deck like this all on its own.
And the other card that we didn't mention yet is the Mist Cutter Hydra. Not a human, but definitely a big deal.
Yeah, that thing comes out of nowhere, kills Jaces. Obviously, you can't counter it. Hard to remove. Lightning Bolt is a really popular removal spell right now. A lot of the time, that X is so large that you can't touch him.
Well, with 4 Noble Hierarch and Moxes and uh, Lotus Petal, he's definitely going to be able to crank that out for a lot of mana really early in the game.
Yeah. Now, Josh made a couple of alterations since the last time we saw him on camera, and actually, he mentioned the coverage directly. He heard us talking about running blue power in the deck because he had the blue duels and access to City of Brass, and he threw in Ancestral and Time Walk, and it worked out extremely well for him. Those cards were very powerful, and it's exactly the type of thing that can push a deck like this over the edge. Time Walk with something like a Noble Hierarch, I mean, you can just get so much extra damage out of nowhere.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, getting to make an extra land drop and draw an extra card is one benefit, but when you already have a developed board, uh, having another attack step can oftentimes just be fatal for your opponent.
Now, this is a fully powered deck in terms of it's got all of the Moxen and Black Lotus. Now he's running Walk and Ancestral. No Twister. Usually people don't talk about Twister when they're referring to fully powered. But at this point, he's really able to push out quite a bit of acceleration. So that Dark Confidant doing work right off the bat. Excellent start for a deck like this.
Look how much mana he has on turn 1. His creatures are uncounterable. Okay, so we've got a Wasteland on the Cavern of Souls. Looks like he wasted during his draw step.
Yeah, I think that's what Borg was intending to do there.
Yeah.
Yeah, you wouldn't intentionally wait until their main phase. There'd be no strategy reason to do that. So
Getting wasted right back. And Borg
is
scooping him up.
packing it in. Looks like he had no more lands in hand
He's seen enough.
and has seen enough. That may be a bit early. That was only a Dark Confidant on board.
Yeah.
So that seems like a little early. I've seen Borg pull out of some difficult spots. Maybe his hand was just that bad that he knew he wasn't going to be able to. But that begs the question, what the heck did he keep? If that's the case. So I'd be interested to talk to him about that one.
I mean, I could see the situation where maybe he already knows what his opponent's on and he's got some sweet new tech that he doesn't want eventually getting seen by his opponent. But in this situation, both players are doing something that's pretty off the beaten path. So I would want to get as much information as possible. Even if it's just like, I start discarding cards and I just don't play anything and just get to see what he's playing. Because this is, I mean, he's got a lot of sideboard decisions to make based off just a Dark Confidant.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, if you're not prepared for something like Mistcutter Hydra because you just thought that they were on, kind of like almost a Bomberman shell. I mean, with what we saw, that potentially could have been a deck like Bomberman. Because I don't usually think of a deck that runs Noble Hierarch as like a powered deck. Most of the time when decks are running something like Noble Hierarch, it's kind of like a fishy build that runs like null rod and very light on the acceleration. Like a bunch of wastelands, and that wasteland does. I don't know. It's interesting. I'm really trying to understand the scoop there. We'll see. Maybe it will pay off for him. If the match goes extremely long, then maybe that time saved would be valuable. But really hard to predict that so early on.
Yeah. And I mean, on Josh's side of the table, I think you just take it. You're just like, okay, cool. I guess I get a free win here.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and Borg has answers to Dark Confidant. He has Abrupt Decay, he has Lightning Bolt. So the fact that he could have potentially gotten that off the table in a few turns, I don't know. We
All
shall
right.
see. All right, so
Borg's ready.
getting ready for the second go. Borg on the play here. Looks like Josh has one of these Spellgrounds playmats. Those things are fantastic.
I don't even know what that is.
That's from way back in the day. It's one of the first Magic products. It's you see them altered quite a bit. That's something that a lot of the time people will bring them to artists and have them altered with Sharpie. They hold up really well. But yeah, they're one of the earliest Magic accessories. Hard to find. They actually make two-player ones that take up the whole table space for both players. Those are extremely expensive. Very
Oh wow,
valuable on eBay. Yeah.
pretty cool. So Borg keeping his hand, both players keeping. He's got a volcanic island, passing the turn. I'm sure whatever Josh does, Borg has a response. That's what that volcanic island says to me.
Yeah, that looks like a lightning bolt or flusterstorm. Oh no, wasteland.
Wasteland. Okay. He's floating mana, and what's that card that he's playing? He's mystical tutoring for an ancestral. Seems like a very strong play. So he's got another blue land in hand. He's going to be able to resolve ancestral, and he just does it on his turn. So how many cards is that going to bring him to?
Well, he went down with the mystical, so he should be fine here.
He should be at exactly 7, right?
Yep.
Yep, 7 cards. And I think I saw a Library of Alexandria in his hand. So if Josh doesn't do something explosive, Borg is really going to just get a chance to get some serious card advantage going on.
And it looks like we are looking directly at explosives.
Black
We
Lotus.
got Lotus, and Cavern. What are we going to do with this? Is that a Confidant?
I think that's a Confidant.
And a
Mayor.
Mayor.
So
well
Confidant, Confidant is a human advisor, right? That's his creature type?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the deck really is human. Now, the only human that we haven't touched on is Grand Abolisher. That's a creature that I would really like to sleeve up. I've been looking at some Bomberman lists that also use Cavern of Souls. And if you think about it as a blue deck, Grand Abolisher with Cavern of Souls, I mean, that's just a nightmare scenario.
He does exactly what? He makes something cost more mana?
No, he's the one that makes it so your opponent can't play spells or use activated abilities on your turn.
Oh, wow, yeah.
So it's just like uncounterable guy. Once he hits, now you can't play anything. So it just completely shuts off your opponent. That could really open up the door for either going infinite with Salvagers or just going infinite with Vault Key. I mean, if you have enough mana, you could just cast the Abolisher and then just cast Vault Key and win. I mean, there's nothing they can do about that. There's literally nothing in Magic that would allow them to do anything about that. I mean, barring something like Mindbreak Trap to exile the Grand Abolisher instead of countering him.
So Borg is revealing what he's tutoring up.
Vamping for Dark Blast.
That was nice of him. Mayor is a 2/2, right? So he's going to get to kill the Bob. Is that a Knight of the Reliquary?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Knight is quite a bit bigger than Dark Blast.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't see Dark Blast working out.
Yeah, I believe Mare is a 1/1 that gives all the other humans +1/+1.
Okay.
So he's going to need to get rid of the Mare, then get rid of the Dark Confidant, all while getting beaten down by the Knight of the Reliquary, which is soon to hit. So this is dangerous territory.
Yeah. Fortunately for Borg, his opponent is only on 2 lands this turn. He already used his Lotus, so he's not going to be able to play the Knight this turn. Um, so how does Mayor flip exactly? What is his?
It's if nobody's played any spells.
Okay, I mean that could happen this turn, but I don't see why Josh would fetch if he wasn't going to play a spell, because that just opens him up to Wasteland. Another Mayor. Okay. So if he doesn't make his third land drop, uh,
Yeah, they pump each other, so that's 5 damage. This is actually that's brutal because now the Dark Blast doesn't do anything.
oh boy.
They're both mares or tutus, so that vamp ends up just being completely wasted.
Did he get a Dark Blast or was that a City of Brass?
Uh, what? Let's see here. We got the Deathrite Shaman, and that is a City of Brass. I thought he had shown the Dark Blast from hand.
I thought the same thing. Maybe it was a City of Brass. Sometimes vamping to ensure that you make
Oh no,
land
that's
drops
it's in
is
his hand.
okay. I mean, I've definitely vamped to ensure land drops, but usually the land I vamp for is like Tolarian Academy, if I'm playing that card.
It's a pretty good place to be usually. Those are the type of cards that I enjoy. Though I like Ancient Tomb too. I do like the consistency. But back in the day with Control Slaver, when Trinisphere was legal, I would run Ancient Tomb's main deck, and that was just huge in the matchup because you were able to play a fetch land and then drop an Ancient Tomb and then Rack and Ruin, so you were able to get to your 3 mana like just so easily.
Yeah, Borg scooping it up.
Yeah, that's just too much damage, and
Yeah.
his answer is just completely useless at that point. So that is one strike against Dark Blast there. That is really brutal, and it's kind of a validation of Mare. You wouldn't really think about it that way, but I mean, pushing things outside of the normal answers is an interesting strategy.
Yeah, no, I mean, I was really excited to see this list. I mean, we didn't really even get to take a look at any of his sideboard cards. He has 2 Abrupt Decay, 2 Stony Silence, 2 Grafdigger's Cage, Serenity, Caracas, Rest in Peace, Nature's Claim, Swords to Plowshares, and Tormod's Crypt. So, oh, maybe we did see the Swords to Plowshares that game. Um, but yeah, no, a very versatile list. Not what you would traditionally think would be a powerful strategy in Vintage, but very glad to see things like this going on. Pretty cool. So that was round 2, and we'll see you guys back here for round 3.
Hi, this is Eric Dupuis,
I'm Matt Orfanello.
and this is Sanctioned Vintage Magic. So we're here in the finals. This was a smaller tournament, so we actually have a unusual pairing here. I got paired down against Borg due to the odd number of players, and I'm still on Rug, and Borg is on his Grixis list. This has been a difficult matchup in the past for me, so we'll see how this goes.
I mean, I can see why it's difficult because Borg has lots and lots of answers and lots of bomby type creatures that need to be dealt with. You have your 4 lightning bolts and you have your counter spells, but you're going to need to use your counter spells to defend your own creatures more often than not. And he has creatures that can outclass yours, namely Scavenging Ooze, that beats the heck out of a Tarmogoyf, and it really just dominates the board state.
Yeah, the longer the game goes, I mean, something like Vendilion Click versus Delver of Secrets is really a perfect example. If you have infinite mana, it's not even close. Vendilion Click is just so much better. But we don't have infinite mana in Magic, and tempo is a huge factor, and so I'm really looking to out-tempo him here. So off to a good start with the Mox Sapphire. Would have been nice to have a follow-up in terms of a Flusterstorm.
Now,
So it looks like I had to be ready for that Ancestral.
I mean, you just played lands and didn't play a creature. I don't see how Ancestral would make sense at that point. Really, with Ancestral, you want to wait until your opponent taps out for something and you can respond with it. You wait for them to put themselves into a corner, but you are just representing responses right now. That's all you're doing.
Yeah, either I kept a really bad hand or I've got the counters. And, I think it's definitely a huge gamble to assume I'm going to keep a bad hand there.
In the finals, yeah, especially. So going down to 19, probably fetching out a volcanic. Let's see. We're going to play a Tarmogoyf here. I think you would have already played the Goyf. Or maybe a young Pyromancer. I would like to see you get a threat on the table.
Yeah, it's entirely possible that I declined to play a threat on the first turn in case he had something like a first turn ancestral or a really powerful play that I needed to counter.
Is that a strip mine or a city of brass? I can't quite tell.
I'm actually not sure. We'll see how he uses it.
Mm-hmm.
He is running city in his list.
Well, I mean, you need to. He's playing 4 colors, and they're all really important. Okay, so we got a Delver.
And a misstep.
Mental misstep. Paying life instead of mana. You have to think about this. Is it worth forcing? Okay, you have your own misstep.
It's worth misstepping back.
It's definitely worth it.
And there's the
Mana
drain.
Drain resolves, but it looks like that Delver is still on the stack.
Yeah, drain targeting my misstep got that out of there. I'm going to go ahead and gush.
That should find you something. I mean, a Flusterstorm would be pretty cool here.
Yeah, that would be a very high storm count to deal with. So that Delver is out of there. I am up cards on the exchange due to the gush, which is nice, but you really do want to be able to get a guy on board.
Right. So you have all of your power on the table right now. Or no, you play Lotus. Time Walk.
Not a particularly spectacular use of Time Walk in this deck.
No, but, I mean, it still lets you go up on lands. You have more permanents than he does. You have the same or more cards in your hand than he does. Yeah. Major land drop and you're gushing.
Yeah, the main reason why I played it there is because he's tapped off with the 2 lands there. Mm-hmm. I do not want to be running out gushes into mana drains and potentially getting totally blown out.
Oh yeah, it lets him just drop Jace and keep mana up. So he played the Dark Confidant, didn't use his mana drain mana. No, what is that? What's that card that he just played? Did it get countered?
Looks like a DT.
Oh, a DT. Didn't use his mana drain mana, which could end up costing him. He could have played, he could have got a Dark Confidant or something and played it.
Yeah, I believe that's a From the Vault strip mine is I think what we're looking at.
Okay.
And then City of Brass, and now he is
Ancient
blowing
Grudge.
up my Sapphire.
Okay. I mean, I would have liked to see him use that that mana drain mana so that he could maybe hold up, at least represent like a Spell Pierce or something.
Yeah, so it looks like he's really trying to go into mana denial mode here.
Which is interesting because we know how many lands you have in your hand. He's got the Trigon Predator. Now that's a beefy creature. It's got a 3 power butt, but still dies to Lightning Bolt.
Yeah, 3 is the magic number.
It's funny, in Modern, 4 is the magic number. People are actually playing cards like Flame Slash now.
I know, it's crazy. I was looking at the coverage. Yeah, I mean, they just don't have Swords to Plowshares.
Right.
So there's that Strip Mine got activated there. And I'm going to go ahead and Mystical Tutor. So basically, Borg's trying to set up a bunch of mana denial, 1-for-1 trades. And I'm just trying to outdraw him. So it would be better if I had a guy on board as I was outdrawing him.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty confident in this line in general. If I'm going to outdraw him, I'm probably going to do just fine here.
On the same token, I would have liked Borg's mana denial plan if he had a guy on the board. Because he could sort of like chip away at your life total while taking away your board presence.
Absolutely. Or if you had Dark Confidant, those 1-for-1 trades just become phenomenal.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, if I've drawn 5 cards, you've drawn 10, you trade 5 for 5, and then you have cards left over. It's amazing.
So Borg is tapping down his Wasteland to play Jace.
Yes, Jace.
Jace is really strong here. That allows one for ones to be more profitable.
Oh, absolutely. If Jace could run away with this game, that's just another example of the more powerful spells that he has in his deck.
See, I would have fate sealed myself if I were Borg. Um, Knowing that you have lightning bolts and you have red open. Oh, but you didn't have the bolt. Lucky for Borg.
Yeah, if I had the bolt, I would have done it in response to the activation because he
Yeah,
could just draw into misstep, and that would just be a disaster. The only other question would be whether or not I'd be waiting to have counter backup to my bolt.
uh-huh.
So we've got a young Pyromancer. That's a problem. That's very difficult for Jace to deal with. Bouncing
Yeah.
Pyromancer can be really, really weak. So he's going to bite and he's going to force a will.
Is that what that is?
Yeah, force. And then I've got the bolt. So this is bad. This is very bad.
Oh, did you have the bolt and just not use it because you wanted to generate a creature token off of it, or
I'm not sure.
you might have just drawn it? I would have just killed the Jace as soon as possible, but I'm more of like a gut reaction type player, and that can kind of bite me sometimes.
And the Goyf.
Yep, Tarmogoyf is definitely bigger than that Dark Confident. Borg's going to need to draw some serious gas here. You have 4 or 5 cards in hand. I think he's Hellbent right now.
Goyf looks like a 6-power creature at this point.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, we have Artifact, Planeswalker, Instant Sorcery, Creatures, and Lands.
Yeah, so that's like half of Blightsteel. Yeah, this is a very dangerous situation. I've found that Dark Confidant, when playing with this rug deck, a lot of the time you're not that worried about him because the few extra damage that he deals is actually worth it. You know, the first time he comes down, the first flip he replaces himself. The second flip, now it's a little bit of card advantage. You know, the third one, you're getting into deep water, but I mean, if they take enough damage along the way, you're actually okay with it.
Hmm. So you're doing an end step brainstorm.
That's going to allow for flipping Delver.
Yep. The Preordain. Preordain is such a strong card. So much better than Serum Visions. It's not even close.
Yeah, the real discussion I think is Ponder versus Serum Visions with a Gush deck, and I actually like Serum Visions more than Ponder because you're not digging for your lands, you're digging for Gushes. So if you Ponder and you see a Gush and 2 bad cards, it's an awkward situation because what do you do there? Like, are you just going to gush into bad cards? You're really not going anywhere. But Preordain can allow you to find a Gush and get rid of a bad card. It's very, very powerful. Now, back when it was 18 lands, no contest. Ponder was better because you needed to dig deeper to try and find those lands. But we're not able to run 18 land mana bases anymore, or 18 mana sources. Workshops are too good, and they've really neutered Blue's ability to make that type of thing happen. So I'm hard casting Mental Misstep there.
Borg scooping it up. I think he was dead on board anyway. The life totals, I think, aren't exactly accurate at this point in the game, but
yeah, that game just escalated very quickly at the end. He just was not able to keep up with the Goyf beats there.
Now, on a psychological perspective, it seems like what I've noticed anyway are people stop adjusting their life totals when they feel like the game is over.
Yes, yeah, that's definitely something to look for. There's a whole side of the game that I haven't seen very much writing on or even discussion of. Things like that, you know, people no longer keeping track of their life total, people not writing down the contents of other people's hands, the way that people shift cards around in their hand. Most people will take all their lands and put it on one side or the other. And that gives you a lot of information if you're looking for it, and you really don't hear people talk about it very much. That's a level of effort that you just don't see put in very often with Magic, which is interesting. I mean, I think it pays off big in limited. That's something I enjoy when I'm playing limited. I mean, people will take, you know, their lands and put them on one side, and then when they draw a card, wherever it goes in their hand, you've got information. Sometimes they'll put it right over with the land, sometimes it'll go over with the spells. It's like, thanks for letting me know. But yeah, you really don't see that very much. But that is definitely a tell when it comes to life totals. People just kind of check out. They're just going through the motions, and that's very helpful.
Yeah. Um, and I mean, one of the reasons that I think it hasn't really been touched on too much is it seems like it's really what's the word I'm looking for? It seems like it wouldn't necessarily apply to everybody, but you'd be surprised how much information, how general this information can really be, and how much application it has on a day-to-day basis in a lot of different scenarios. Um,
Yeah, it's something people aren't really conscious of doing, and honestly, it's not the easiest thing in the world to do to be able to pay attention to that stuff and play well, and I think that's part of the reason why people don't talk about it as much. It's one of those strategies or one of those tactics that trying to pay attention to it and really focus on. If you're going to be making bad choices or suboptimal choices because you're distracted by trying to pick up all of these little pieces of information, then it's not really worth pursuing. It really is, if you're at a certain technical level with your deck where the decision trees are really refined and you know where you're going with each line of play, then you can look for that type of information. But yeah, you could definitely get yourself in hot water if you're trying to figure out, did my opponent draw a land or not, when really you should be thinking about the technical decisions that lie ahead of you in the game.
hmm. So Borg's going to be on the play here. Um, I'm not sure what he brings in from the sideboard. Uh, Maybe he beefs up on his abrupt decays or spot removal because it seems like spot removal would be kind of premium in this matchup.
Yeah, it's very strong against the Delver and the Goyf. Against Young Pyromancer, though, he is kind of a foil for that strategy. There are plenty of times where you could have the abrupt decay from my Young Pyromancer, and I might just be able to gush and lightning bolt in response and make an army out of nowhere.
Hmm.
So again, I'm opening up with no play with a Mox, and I'm going to go ahead and Mystical.
Misstep, and we'll
And
misstep right
misstepping
back.
back. Yeah, missteps, one of those cards that just you don't want to be outgunned with.
No. And now that you know that you won that misstep war, that clears the path to go get a one drop.
Absolutely, I grab Ancestral here almost every time.
Now it would be even more of a blowout as if we see you use that Ruby end step to bolt his Dark Confidant.
That would be ridiculous.
But even if you don't, it's likely that you'll draw it off of the Ancestral. Okay, so it's not that ridiculous, but it is still pretty ridiculous. So we're going to go ahead and Ancestral.
No Pyromancer first.
Now you have plenty of options
2 mana. And
and a
there's the Pyromancer.
Pyromancer.
Yeah, Pyromancer is very similar to Dark Confidant if Dark Confidant only ever drew Memnite. Like, in general, you're going to get a 1/1 about once per turn. It'll pretty much average out that way.
Hmm. So he's got a Deathrite Shaman,
Makes it really hard for me to swing in.
and he's offering the trade. He,
Probably means he has another one in hand.
yeah.
Um,
Oh, wow.
but yeah, that was...
So he's flusterstorming that gush, but you're still gonna get a token, and you're still gonna block. Uh, yeah, that's gonna be kind of a blowout for Borg.
Yeah, that's just a huge value loss there.
And I don't even think the flusterstorm was necessarily. Uh, I don't know if you flusterstorm the gush. I mean, I guess you do, but his Bob still dies, and
Yeah, the fact that he tapped off the mana, I mean, I believe if he was offering that trade, it's very likely he had another Confidant in hand. That's usually when you see that type of play.
hmm.
So, like, the fact that he Flusterstormed, now he can't drop the other Confidant. He's way behind in tempo now. Now, the good news is that Deathrite does hold off a significant amount of tokens. I mean, you really can't start sending tokens in until you have like 5 or 6. if you're going to try and outrace the Deathrite, because he's going to be able to eat a token every combat and eat creatures to gain life potentially. So that guy does a lot to stem the tide.
Ooh, 1 mana answer to Jace. That's pretty devastating.
Yeah, Pyroblast is one of those cards that you're happy to bring in this matchup. Jace is one of the cards I miss when I play these type of aggro decks. I mean, he's so good and he helps so much with stabilizing. Um,
Blind flip.
yeah, I mean, that's how it's done. Let them know you have the force of will.
Yeah. Borg has 2 cards in hand, so he's starting to have less and less time to sort of play around with the information that he got when you revealed that force. So he's going to go down to 14 here. Oh, looks like you're also swinging with the Pyro Man, offering the trade with the Deathrite.
Yeah, holding him back I don't think is the play. If he does trade, then I'm going to start swinging for 4 a turn and I get the Deathrite off the board. And there's a strong chance that he's not going to block.
Yeah, so Borg is actually at 12. He's stopped adjusting his life total.
Yeah, things are very, very grim here.
Got another Deathrite. Lightning bolts.
Yeah, I don't agree with playing the Deathrite first there. That builds the storm. That would make it so Flusterstorm could be a lot better. Not a fan of that.
And I guess he killed the Delver because he can't block it. He can certainly block anything on the ground right now. He's got 2 Deathrite Shaman.
Yeah, Young Pyromancer has the potential to overwhelm him, but
Vamp on end step down to 10.
the Delver would definitely kill him eventually.
So you're allowing Vamp to resolve. You have Force in hand, so it's likely you'll just force whatever he casts. He's Hellbent, so he's really just drawing this 1 card.
Yeah. This is one of those instances where you pretty much have to let the Vamp Tutor resolve.
Well, yeah, if you counter Vamp, then he still has whatever out he was going to Vamp for, and he could just draw it naturally. This way, he gets rid of his tutor, he goes down 2 life, and you deal with whatever out he has. This is one of those scenarios where you have perfect information. You know you have force. He only has 1 card. I can't think of anything that he would get right now that you can't force and just blow him out.
Yeah, it would take some kind of like Jedi foresight to go get Library of Alexandria and expect the game to go to the point where you get back up to 7 cards in hand. And that is extremely unlikely. Any type of spell is going to get countered here. So we're going to go ahead and run out a Trigon.
And yeah, that's probably getting forced. Unless you don't have a blue card. I mean, that's always a possibility.
At 18, I'm not even sure if it's the right play to force that guy. He's really not that big a deal.
Yeah.
I mean, he's going to beat for 2 in the air. A Delver can trade with him. And yeah, I mean, Goyf is really going to put him back on his heels here.
Perfectly fine race. So he opts to make you lose life rather than gain life. Does he have access to green mana? No.
No, not yet.
I mean, he could use 1 Deathrite to make green mana for the other Deathrite, but that doesn't seem...
Yeah, I mean, he can aggressively use the Deathrites to do a lot of things here, but Goyf is going to close the door pretty quickly. So we've got a 4-power Goyf.
And you can't remove artifacts with Deathrite. So if he chooses to attack with his Trigon Predator, he's permanently going to increase the power of your Tarmogoyf.
Well, he doesn't have to use the trigger. It is a May. Yeah.
Okay.
It is a May. So that would be an interesting decision.
Instead, he's just leaving the team back. Now, if he doesn't block, when you leave the team back, if you don't block, that's a waste of, you could have just attacked. Like, it's a flyer if he wasn't planning on blocking anyway. I mean, I guess you leave the Trigon back because it can block the Pyromancer, and it prevents him from just, like, it prevents you from just sending in with Pyromancer.
So he shrunk the Goyf a little bit, trying to maintain his life total.
So he only... Wait, Goyf is a 1-2?
No, it's a 3/4.
How did
Uh,
he go from 10 to 9?
I think he gained 2 life and
Oh,
took 3.
oh, okay. Oh, so he does have access to green mana right now.
Yeah, he used 1 Death Right to get the green for the other.
Oh, okay.
Just really trying to slow the bleeding here.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess leaving the Trigon back is preventing you from getting in with your 2/1, but you're probably not going to send a 2/1 into a couple of 1/2s anyways.
Well, I did do it earlier, so that can be difficult to gauge, but I agree that's it's at least a decision. I'd probably swing with the young Pyromancer just to get one of those Death Rights off the board because those do have the threat of giving him some real reach.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm basically looking at lethal here. He's got 2 Death Rights. He could do 4 to me with the Death Rights, 2 in the air, and then 4 and 2. I mean, that's 12 damage.
Yeah.
So the game is a lot closer than I think Borg thinks it is right here. But yeah, not swinging with the Trigon has definitely been an issue.
Right. I mean, he didn't get any value off it. He hasn't done anything with it.
Oh, here we go.
So he mana drains your Tarmogoyf. That puts creature back in the graveyard.
And he's not going to be able to get rid of that.
And he used his green mana already somehow this turn. Oh, a Death Right's already tapped. That's why.
Sending the team.
So now he gets to make that block he was hoping to make, and he's just gonna let the Goyf come through. Is there any way you can make sure it's 5 mana? Okay, the Lightning Bolt
And
will
there
seal
we
the
go.
deal. All right, so Borg's Hellbent. He has no responses. He's tapped out. Oh, I guess he could make you lose 2 life in response, but that's not going to be enough.
Oh, whoa, what's going
Uh,
on here?
oh, I'm actually at more life.
Is that actually what's happening? Looks like there's a bookkeeping issue here, so I should not be bolting his face then.
Yeah.
Well then. How dicey.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of those situations where, like, now he knows you have bolts, but, like, I don't necessarily, you don't, I mean,
Gotta really think this
you made
out.
that decision based off of him being at 5. So if he's actually at 7, you have a whole nother to sit. You probably wouldn't have even swung like that. That's yeah, it's a tough
Yeah, no,
situation.
this is messy. I will be very displeased if I don't win this match.
Mhm.
From the thrill of victory, just snatched away there, that
Yeah,
lethal lightning bolt. So, real decision to make here.
because now lightning bolt would just put him at 1. He doesn't have you on the swing back. He doesn't because he can only deal 6. But um, yeah, this is still. So you're getting a land back in the graveyard. I don't know if that. Okay, so that brings him. That brings Goyf up. He can still remove it after the block, but he wouldn't be able to make you lose life. I guess he could potentially do 8 damage to you next turn because if he activates Deathray on your turn to make you lose 2 life, and then he has 2 more Deathray activations, that's 6, plus a 2 damage attack, which is 8. But I don't think he has any 4 damage spells like a Galvanic Blast or whatever. I don't even know what does 4 damage.
Shrapnel Blast of
Shrapnel
5.
Blast. There we go.
Fire Blast.
Yeah.
Alright. So I'm going to keep the Pyromancer alive and make a 1/1. Disastrous situation there with the life total.
Yep.
3 coming through. I'm losing a token, but I generated a token.
All right. So
I am taking charge
let's
here.
make sure. So Borg drew a land, which does not bode well for him. He's going to have to block your Tarmogoyf and probably block a token and get 2 activations. Probably not going to be enough, but this is vintage. He could. I don't think he's cast ancestral yet, so we'll see where this goes. I think you're definitely correct to just Alpha Strike here. He's not representing lethal, and is he just packing it in? Is that the scoop?
Looks like he's blocking.
Uh, to scoop or not to scoop? That is the question. Okay, so those are his blocks.
1 damage goes through.
No activations. That doesn't seem correct. That's one of those just sort of like defeated.
Oh no, he did.
Okay, he did.
He did.
Okay,
Just didn't tap the mana.
so he's actually at 3 life. He
Oh,
drew the Ancient Grudge.
phew.
Okay, so I mean that was
Almost. That could have been bad.
yeah, but Eric taking it down, showing everybody how it's done. Nice job, congratulations.
Thanks. That was a really fun field. We actually didn't get Adrian Becker on camera, so we're gonna work hard on the next one to make sure round one, whatever crazy brew he'll be playing, he's currently on an Orcish Lumberjack build. I hope he's still playing it for the next time. I'd like to thank some people. Thanks, Matt, for being here. This is always a lot of fun. I really enjoy doing this with you.
I enjoy it too.
Also, Dave over at Scholars. He's been a tireless supporter of Vintage and Legacy through the years. Really enjoy playing in his store, being part of this community. And thank you to the viewers. You're all new, and please subscribe. And we look forward to growing this and spreading this sanctioned vintage as big as it can possibly get.
All right. Thanks for having me, Eric. I really enjoyed it, and thank you everybody for watching.